Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my podcast. I've got a real treat for you today. I have a very good friend from Instagram, and we've been talking about chatting for a while, so it's great to have him on here. And we have a very interesting topic for you guys today. I'm getting ready for my next film role, and I have 30 days to really get in shape, get ripped, lose some weight, get fitter. And Andreas is the perfect person to help me with this. So now he's not just going to help me, he's going to help you guys because you may be getting ready for a wedding, for some kind of big event that you're preparing for. And of course, 30 days is just a start. We want you to stay in shape and, stick to your diet and everything afterwards. But 30 days can actually change your life. So, Andreas, please introduce yourself a little bit to our followers, who you are, what you do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lynn, for inviting me to your podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, first of all. So I appreciate the invitation.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
so I'm a movement specialist, a nutritionist, and a lifestyle optimization coach. I help people get out of pain, move well, and feel good and look good in all areas of life. And I incorporate all pillars and principles of health to help people achieve that. So it's not only just about looking at exercise and nutrition, but it's looking at lifestyle factors, environmental factors that could potentially be influencing our metabolism, our sleep, our hormones, and all of this, therefore impacting our overall health and well-being as well.
We both have a big passion for quantum biology, right? And that's really where it all begins.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When you actually understand that the body is an electromagnetic being, and that is what is actually governing the biochemistry, you start to take it way more seriously. And I know for people, it sounds like a fancy term who have never heard about it before. But
Yes.
what quantum biology really refers to is what's actually happening on a quantum level, meaning it's so small, so minuscule, but again, it's having such huge effects. A little bit like the butterfly effect, how a butterfly here in Cyprus could cause a tsunami somewhere else, in another
Here in
area of the world.
Gibraltar.
Yeah, exactly. It can have this quantum effect, almost like an instantaneous effect. And we know that there are certain things, for example, like sunlight, grounding, and also on the other spectrum, the blue light and the non-native electromagnetic fields. All of these are quantum phenomena affecting us on a quantum level and therefore on a biochemical level. Some things are positive, some things are negative, and we're definitely going to be diving into that today to actually understand what's impacting our biology so we can actually optimize and go away from the things that are sabotaging our health.
So what does our environment have to do with, for example, our weight?
Well, it's actually huge because our environment is not just simply the environment that we live in. It's giving us information about the time of the year, the type of the light intensity, the temperature, the season, and all of these things are actually influencing our biology on a cellular level and our hormones massively, because this is our circadian rhythm is what governs literally our hormones, and our circadian rhythm doesn't go only on a daily basis, but it also goes on a seasonal basis and also on a yearly basis. So if we are not in tune with our environment, meaning in connection, being outdoors, being grounded barefoot to the ground, we actually become out of sync. And what happens then, our biology and our metabolism literally gets out of sync as well and is not able to work as well as it should. So our hormones begin to suffer. We're not going to have good energy levels. We're not going to be able to perform in the gym, and we're not going to have good sleep. So therefore, it's going to create this perpetual cycle where we wake up feeling tired, lethargic, unmotivated, and we don't have the drive to do what we actually want in life. And so this is why it's so important for us to have a healthy environment. And by being healthy, it means to just simply reconnect with nature, where human came from in the first place. Now, the issue with modern living is that it disconnects us from nature and it messes up our hormones. So it raises our cortisol, which is our stress hormone. This is going to lead us to have more cravings, more insulin spikes, more blood glucose dysregulation, all of this, which is going to sabotage our fat loss progress. And based on what you talked about at the beginning, we don't want to be sabotaging ourselves if we are trying to optimize our biology in order to lose body fat in the quickest amount of time and get in shape.
And is it possible to actually achieve visible results in 30 days, according to your experience?
It is possible, but it all depends on the starting point of the individual. So first of all, I like to give a few examples so people can actually identify themselves within these examples. If you're someone who has never exercised before and you're expecting to see massive results in 30 days, yes, you can lose a tremendous amount of body fat. But once you get to the end of that 30 days, you will look a little bit like a stick because you have no muscle underneath of that body fat. And the muscle is what gives the shape to the body. Now, another important factor to mention is the less muscle we have underneath our body fat, the lower our metabolic rate is going to be, which means that our dieting will need to be way more aggressive, meaning that we will need to restrict and starve ourselves way, way more compared to somebody who doesn't have as much muscle. And so you need to understand your situation. Have you been exercising for a long time? Have you not been exercising for a long time? You need to be sort of realistic with yourself and also not sabotage your health as well in the process, because getting in shape does not necessarily equal health outcomes, because health is built on the inside and therefore reflects on the outside. This is something that I tell my clients all the time because it is a long-term game. If you are willing to spend a couple of years in building your body up, raising your metabolic rate, getting your body to a healthy state where fat loss becomes an easy byproduct of your life, that is the way to go, rather than continuously chasing these short-term diets and aggressively trying to diet down, continuously losing muscle and never focusing on the foundation, which is basically elevating your metabolic rate and mastering your internal health.
What do you think about these GLP-1 activators like Ozempic, and everyone's on these injections now?
Yeah.
What is your experience? What have you seen with these things?
Well, based on what I've been reading and researching online, it doesn't really look that great. I think they do have their use case and their time and place for individuals where they are super obese and super overweight in a way where it's gone so far that no amount of dieting or exercise is going to fix the problem like as soon as possible, because these individuals need a solution right now. They are in great danger for their entire health, and simply by losing weight, body fat specifically, is going to help improve all health outcomes. And so if you are somebody who doesn't really have much weight to lose, or you feel like you just have a little bit of a belly, and you want to get fit, you are definitely not the person to be taking that stuff, because what I've been reading online, it can lead to all kinds of issues, this gastrointestinal issues, bone loss, muscle loss, eye problems, eye vision problems. So it can lead to all kinds of issues. This is not something to play around with. It's mainly for these emergency uses and extreme cases. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. What do you recommend instead of doing that? So let's talk about diet, because I come from keto, carnivore kind of background.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think you've been there as well, right? But you have
Yes.
now kind of shifted your focus when it comes to diet. Tell us a little bit about what you would recommend to someone just starting out, wanting to lose weight, wanting to get healthier. Where do we begin?
I think the most important thing, if I don't know anything about an individual, is to tell them to eat real foods. If you're not eating real foods, start with that. That is the fundamental and the foundation. Real foods means that nature's providings. Anything that nature doesn't provide is not real food, and therefore you shouldn't consume it. That's just a fact. It ends there.
Yeah.
So that means that it's meat, vegetables, fruits. That's it. Maybe some nuts, like not here and there. But even though I'm not the biggest advocate for eating nuts, I still believe that, if nature provides it, and if you were stuck in nature and you didn't have anything else to eat, don't tell me that you wouldn't go and eat some nuts.
Of course.
It's obviously a survival food, right? That's why it's there. There are more optimal choices for daily life, but there are also some emergency cases. And I believe this is also to do a lot with the past, when it has to do with the wars, where people were very scared and obsessed about not having enough calories. So they kept a lot of really fatty foods in their cupboards, really energy dense foods, which were not really healthy for you, but they kept you alive in times of war. You could eat, for example, like a scoop of something and it would be like 1,000 calories.
Yeah, lard, for example.
Yeah, and that's amazing, right? That can be amazing fuel. But if you overdo it, especially in this modern world that now we have an abundance of everything, an abundance of carbohydrates, an abundance of protein, that is when you start to run into some issues. So number one, eat real foods. Number two, you need to understand how much does your body actually need based on your activity level, your body size, and also your gender, and also how old you are.
Mhm.
All of these things, all of these factors, they actually determine how much food you can actually eat. And so if you don't have much muscle mass, as I mentioned previously, you can't eat as much food if you actually want to lose body fat. And so if you want to actually lose body fat in 30 days, you will have to actually restrict pretty hard. But it all depends where you're coming from. For example, if you're an individual who doesn't exercise and doesn't have much muscle, and you've been eating 2000 calories per day before, but you didn't know that you were eating that much. You start tracking and all of a sudden you realize this is how much I'm eating my standard diet. And all of a sudden now I will switch you over to a deficit, because in order to lose body fat, we always need to be in a deficit of some form, whether it is that we're burning more energy than we are taking in, or we're eating just less energy than we are burning. So it always comes back down to this. This is literally the foundation of all fat loss diets. Every single fat loss diet that has in common is literally this. If you're experiencing some incredible results by going keto or doing some other kind of diet, it's because you are losing a lot of water weight at the beginning and it seems like fat loss, but eventually you hit a plateau and it doesn't go down anymore unless you go in a calorie deficit. So all the diets, literally the foundation is a calorie deficit of some form, whether that is from moving your body more, exercising more, in combination with being in a calorie restriction for a period of time. No one said that you need to do this diet forever, but if you have a certain goal, of course, this is the most scientifically backed way to do it. And what I have managed to do with my clients every single time without fail, and also with myself, I purposefully do these gaining phases every single year where I go a couple of months where I eat as much food as possible on purpose. So I can gain weight in terms of muscle, but I also gain body fat at the same time. Now, once I have gotten to a point where I feel like I can't continue anymore in this rate gaining because of my health and also the amount of body fat that I have on my body, and I'm not comfortable anymore, I will begin a dieting phase. And of course, what I will do from there is a massive, restriction in comparison to what I was eating before. So let's say I was eating 4,000 calories before, and then all of a sudden I cut it to 2,000. What do you think is going to happen? My body's going to see this contrast. The brain is going to go, oh, wow, there's such a massive reduction in energy. And so basically, like, it starts to use the body fat as energy, because it's trying to find your metabolism is still very high from all of that food that you've been consuming, because your metabolic rate rises every time when you eat more food. And every time you eat less food, your metabolic rate goes down. This is a normal phenomenon. This is not dysfunction in the metabolism, because it makes sense, right? You have a fire, you feed the fire increases. You don't feed the fire starts to go out eventually. This is why chronic dieting can be extremely dangerous for your metabolism and your thyroid and your stress hormones. So I always recommend people to either be in a calorie maintenance or a slight calorie surplus the majority of the year, and do short dieting phases, like we're talking about, aggressive dieting phases, to lose the body fat. So we're at a comfortable state where we can sort of cruise the majority of the year.
Andreas, what do you think about, because I personally know women, and it has also happened to me, where we are in a calorie deficit or in fact fasting, and we can be
Yes.
gaining weight. So we are eating nothing or next to nothing, or even
Yes.
water fasting, and you lose weight.
Yes.
I've done extended water fast, like up to 10 days. I have a friend who does 21 days. And even with water fasting, like at one point the weight loss stops and we start
Yes.
putting on weight. So how is
Yes.
that possible when we're not taking any food in?
Well, as I said to you, your body is very intelligent. It down-regulates the metabolic rate on purpose because it sees that no food is coming in, right? Or not so much food. So it starts to decrease your general functions in the body, preserving that energy for your vital organs, because your body needs at least 1,000 to 1,200 calories every single day, no matter who you are,
Yeah.
just to carry out its normal biological functions. So as soon as you step below that threshold, you are stepping into deep water right now, into really down regulating your metabolism, because your thyroid is sensing every single bit of food that is coming in, specifically when it's carbohydrates. When it's carbohydrates, your metabolic rate begins to increase extremely fast. Whereas when we don't consume carbohydrates, our metabolic rate begins to decline, because carbohydrates are an environmental cue about the season. And
Yes.
so when the body understands that, oh, we have an abundance of sugar in the environment, it knows it's safe. So it can increase its metabolic rate. It can start burning more. But when there is a lack of that, it says, hey, now we have to store, because obviously it's winter time and we are going into survival mode. This is again like a inbuilt mechanism. It's not a dysfunction of the body. So this is exactly why some people, when they chronically diet or you are restricting way too much, your body is actually going to slow down your metabolism so much that actually prevents you from losing body fat. So it's actually more beneficial to be not so much in a deficit, but still in a deficit. The problem is the how aggressive you are with your deficit, you see. And so you need to first understand what is your basic metabolic rate, how much you're burning on a daily basis without doing anything. And then on top of that, you add your movement, and you add your digestive processes, and then you add your exercise and all of these things. And that makes your total daily energy expenditure. That is how many calories or energy your body is burning the entire day. But the biggest percentage of that is your basic metabolic rate. And what influences your basic metabolic rate the most is how much muscle mass you actually have on your body. And this is why I will keep on hammering this message over and over and over, because the more muscle you have, the more mitochondria we have. Yes. So that means we have more energy factories in the body. The energy factories need energy, and so they will burn more energy. And so this is what the bonus of acquiring more muscle. You're not only increasing your metabolic rate, but you're also having a massive reservoir, a sponge, to soak up that glucose as well from your blood, independent from insulin. So you don't actually need insulin. You can just drive the glucose from your blood into your muscle. This is another benefit of having more muscle. So it truly is an organ of longevity.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm always driving that home. I'm always telling, especially for, as we get older into your 40s, 50s, women, you have to build muscle. I mean, there's just no other way to age gracefully. Yes. I think it's so important. Andreas, what are your views on carbohydrates? So what kind of carbs would you recommend? Would you recommend eating them seasonally or all year long?
Yes. So my view is very context dependent. So it really depends on the individual. It's not very black and white due to the fact that social media makes it so black and white. So I've tried all kinds of diets. I've done the carnivore diet, keto diet, sugar fasting, and all kinds of different diets, right? And
let's start with the sugar fasting. Let's talk about that for a second, because that's quite trendy right now. Tell us about the sugar fast.
So the idea behind the sugar diet and the sugar fasting is the fact that it increases our metabolic rate, as I explained earlier, what it actually does to your metabolism due to your thyroid, because your thyroid controls your metabolism massively, like greatly. And so the idea of that diet is that there is an absence of protein. It's not so much about the sugar itself. It is more the absence of protein that does the magic. And I explain to you why. When we have an absence of protein in our diet, our body increases our metabolic rate on purpose to try and break down the foods and extract the nutrients as fast as it can, because it's trying to search for the protein within that food. But it keeps on trying to break it down and burn through that energy in order to find the protein, but it's not finding the protein. So it keeps on increasing and increasing the metabolic rate, because this one hormone, FGF21, gets released after we are restricted from protein for a certain period of time. So the longer we go without protein, the higher FGF21 increases. But again, this can also backfire at some point, because we become FGF21 resistant at some point when we have too much all the time. And so this is why it's more wise to do this more intermittent and not do this so long term. Because if you become FGF21 resistant, you also become leptin resistant. They sort of go hand in hand.
And then you start gaining weight.
Yes, you don't have the satiety either. Because basically one of the features of the sugar diet, which is very badly named, to be honest, because you don't necessarily need to eat straight table sugar. You can just eat fruits, because fruits work way better because they are fructose and they act directly on the liver where FGF21 is actually produced. And so it's a way more effective in comparison to eating straight sugar or rice or, candies and stuff like that. I know a lot of people do that because it doesn't influence the FGF21 production, but I wouldn't recommend it for health reasons, right? As I mentioned earlier, it's always better to go with whole foods. So when I did the sugar diet, I was primarily eating only fruits and honey, nothing else. And then I would eat I would go 24 hours without any protein at all or fats. That's a very important thing to mention. And then basically the next day I would continue a regular diet. But and it's honestly every single time when I did that fast, even though I was eating the same amount of calories that I would with my regular days. So let's say I was eating 2,000 calories every day, but I would do the sugar fasting day also 2,000 calories. I would always drop weight, which was super interesting. And I would see visible results in the mirror. I could see that my skin was tighter. I would look leaner. And when I returned to my regular diet, it just made me look even more jacked because I received all the amino acids that my body needed. It found that equilibrium again, and I didn't push it too far, to become resistant in, FGF21
you would only
or
do this for 24 hours max? Because I know
well,
some people are doing 3 days or even longer.
You can. Depends on the circumstance. For example, somebody who has a lot of weight to lose, they're not really so concerned about losing muscle, right? They're more concerned about losing the body fat. So in that case, yes, someone can do it for longer periods of time. Like I know people who have done it for months and months on end without eating the protein. But that's a bit dangerous because then you're entering vegan territory, and then you start to get into nutrient deficiencies. And another downside of this diet as well is the deuterium that you actually are consuming, which is a heavy isotope of hydrogen, which can actually be blocking your mitochondria from making energy, so damaging the mitochondrial engines, which is number one. So eating carbs out of season.
Well, you would also lose muscle, right? If you're not eating any protein for months on end, you'd also have muscle loss.
Yeah, exactly. So the nutrient deficiencies I was talking about, you're going to get deficient in many nutrients. And when you eat a carbohydrate-rich diet, you actually burn through way more minerals in the process of making energy. You also produce a lot more reactive oxygen species within your system. So if you're somebody who has, you're more prone to inflammation, it can be a little bit pro-inflammatory. Now, I'm not saying the inflammation is bad because you obviously need inflammation for some, situations, but having it all the time is not the best idea.
No, definitely not. Okay, so what's your take on bread, pasta, rice? Is there a place for these things or big no?
I think that gluten is not a good idea for human beings in general. Now, I'm not sure if it's the gluten or the pesticides, but I know that gluten in general bothers me and bothers a lot of my clients. So I just tell people to not consume gluten at all. And so gluten containing foods are obviously all the foods that people love, right? Yes. Donuts, pizzas, pastas, pastries, cookies, literally every single thing has gluten in it. And it makes you think, is it the gluten which is actually addictive? Well, and when you think about it, the role of gluten really, which is actually an amino acid, it's a protein within the substance of flour, it creates this gooey effect. And the gooey effect seems to be very addictive in nature for human beings for some reason, So I don't think that humans should be consuming these types of foods. However, if you did want to consume this type of foods, you need to do it in a clever and wise way. So obviously, if your goal is to lose body fat and lose weight, you have to make sure that you are eating in a calorie deficit. You can still consume those foods. I don't believe that they are most optimal because they're not going to satisfy you the most. They're not going to give you the most nutrition. They're not going to give you the best hydration. They're not going to give you the best, remineralization in comparison to eating fruits and vegetables, which are always loaded with all of those things. Whereas breads, pastas, pastries, all of these, they are just literally calories without really much nutrition in them.
And they make you hungrier. Like, for example, with my husband, we usually have like bacon, eggs, or eggs Benedict, like those kinds of breakfast with no bread.
Yes.
And that, sustains us for the whole day. We'll have like a breakfast 10, 11, and then an early dinner, lunch combination 4, 5, and then we're done for the day. And the other day he had just pancakes for breakfast. And a few hours later, he was shaking. He was shaking like this. So I guess his blood sugar dropped. He was hungry. And like this uncontrollable shaking and hunger overcame him. And he's like, what is this? Like, this never happens to me. I can go the whole day without eating. And I think a lot of people don't realize this. When you start your breakfast with breakfast cereal and, orange juice from a bottle and all this, and you just literally sugar and nothing else. And then you're hungry an hour later. They don't understand what's happening, but you're on this roller coaster for your blood sugar, and you're going to be hungry all day long.
It's the lack of fiber, number one, because fiber regulates your blood sugar. So if you eat, for example, the fruits, it normally always comes with fiber. So if you eat one fruit, you're not going to be craving like fruits in a while. Of course, if it depends how hungry you actually are at the baseline to begin with. But if you eat like quite a lot of fruits for breakfast, you're not going to be hungry until lunchtime, 4 or 5 hours afterwards. And you're neither going to be shaking either, because the blood sugar is going to be more stable due to the fact that it comes in the matrix. It comes, with the exclusion zone water, it comes with the fiber, it comes with the minerals. So your body literally knows how to deal with this situation. But when you eat something which is devoid of proteins and fats as well, proteins and fats also stabilize blood sugar. So this is why, for example, when you do the sugar diet, you're literally starving the entire day. It's absolutely no joke. Like, for example, when I was doing it, I would eat my meal. I would eat maybe like almost a whole watermelon, like a massive one, maybe 5-6 kilos in one day, which is a lot of food. But I was starving the whole day. And when I went to bed at night, I couldn't wait for my breakfast in the morning. But I knew that this feature, the feeling that you have of this hunger, is actually where your body is really tapping into that body fat, because you actually need to experience a feeling of hunger in order to actually drop the body fat. If you don't feel hungry, there's a chance that you're not using your body fat as fuel.
Oh, that's very interesting and something to look out for, definitely. So we established that gluten is not good for us as
No.
humans. So what about all the gluten-free stuff that's available in the supermarkets today? Are those
Well,
better
that's all crap too, because it's even more processed. I would rather you eat an organic, like gluten-filled something rather than
sourdough
eat
bread or
this.
something, right? It would be
Yeah,
better than,
exactly.
yeah.
Anything local, seasonal, organic is always the best choice. Going back to nature, anything that human has fiddled with their hands and their brain, stay away from,
And it
because
has a
it doesn't
label on it, right? The label's always like, stay away.
it doesn't have nature's intelligence. There is literally an intelligence coded within every single nutrient and food that exists out there. When you eat something seasonally, it's informing your body about the time of the year, about the intensity of the light environment. It's informing you about everything, and your body is able to tune its metabolism in accordance to that and work at its most optimal rate. So our metabolism actually changes, all year round. It doesn't remain stable. And so obviously, if you eat seasonally, your carbohydrate consumption will also change.
Yes.
So you will eat more fructose in the summertime, which is normal because you have more fruits in your environment, because higher UV means more fruits. Lower UV means less fruits, which means you should be eating less fruits in your diet. So you should be eating more starchy things, or you should be eating more things like potatoes, sweet potatoes, squash, like zucchini, more vegetable type things. And notice the intelligence of nature, right? That in the wintertime, we don't have such high glycemic foods. But in the summertime, we have the highest glycemic foods. Do you think that this is by chance? Because the sun actually makes us more insulin sensitive. And we are able to now absorb and utilize all of that sugar that we are eating. In the wintertime, we are more insulin resistant. And that makes total sense because there's a lack of light. And this is why we must expose ourselves to the cold, because that compensates for the lack of light in our environment.
Let's talk about the cold for a moment then.
Oh, cold
I
is
love
so
cold
powerful.
exposure. It's my favorite. I've been doing it for, I think, 11, 12 years since I found Jack Cruz. And
Nice.
it's been a part of my health regime ever since.
Yeah. So tying it into your first question that you asked, how people can get in shape, in 30 days, I feel like this is an absolute game changer for people, because increases metabolic rate like nothing else. Doing cold exposure is literally like a workout without doing a workout. So it's an absolute hack if you get cold every single day. And of course, people need to be within their own limits, right? Everyone has their own threshold. But obviously, the colder you go, the more energy you will burn. So, but that doesn't mean that people need to harm themselves in the process.
Yes.
You need to go where it's sensible for you, right? And if you're not used to doing that, you need to acclimatize to the situation and the process. So I don't want you to hear this podcast and all of a sudden go and do a 0-degree ice bath and then faint and die or something like that. So basically, you want to take this process very, very seriously. But humans have evolved to be exposed to the cold, as for thousands and thousands of years. And so the problem with modern living is that we're all the time comfortable, and our comfort is killing us and making us fat. And so it is actually the uncomfortable things which are amazing for our metabolic rate, our metabolism. Looking good becomes easy when you live in alignment with nature. It's just so much easier, you know. But of course, if you add in there into the equation what we talked about previously about your calorie deficit as well, you are going to see tremendous results. You can't just only connect with nature, because I know a lot of people in the circadian health space, they just focus on, oh, I'm doing the light, I'm sleeping good, I'm eating seasonally, but they're not tracking their food. And everyone's wondering why they're not losing body fat. It's not like, you know, you are going to get to a certain point by following good circadian habits and health and having good sleep and optimizing your hormones. But you have to obviously address the foundation, which is the energy equation. You cannot bypass that. This is a fundamental part of the process. And if you want to see results as fast as possible, it's better to track, because if you track, you know what you're actually doing. You're not kidding yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because this is what we want to do. We want to be tracking in order to be able to make ourselves into a lab rat, so we can actually study our body. How does it respond to certain amount of food intake, right? So again, yeah, adding the colding there is going to increase our total daily energy expenditure, what we talked about previously. So that means we're burning more calories the entire day. So if you increase that and you're also in a calorie deficit, now your deficit is bigger, which means accelerated fat loss. You also increase the amount of brown fat that you have inside of your body, and brown fat is loaded with mitochondria. And so obviously, as we said previously, mitochondria require more energy, which means more calorie burning, more energy burning. So you're burning more at rest without doing anything. It's an absolute blessing. So, and it's also amazing for the thyroid too.
Yeah, and it's great for the skin, for cellulite, for everything. I think it's just really
Yes.
important for people, like you said, to understand that, because you see all these celebrities doing ice baths and all this stuff. You don't need to go to that extreme, especially in the beginning. And especially if you're having like, already a very stressful life, then maybe you don't want to overstress your body in that sense. But you can also do like a face plunge, start with that, or just turning your shower a little bit cooler. And I think the best way is really once, the climate starts getting cooler, like I
Yeah.
never start dressing up. I don't have any winter clothes. I just, as the
Yes.
temperature gradually drops, I just keep wearing the same clothes that I wear all year. So, and then you just get used to it, just like the animals in the wild get used to it, and like how humans used to get used to it. So we're not meant to be in this perpetual summer when it's cold outside. So I think once people understand that, cold thermogenesis can be just a simple thing, just lowering the shower and enjoying like a cool burst at the end of your shower, that's already beneficial.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's huge. I mean, contrast therapy is amazing in itself. I mean, it has so many benefits for the mind as well. You know, you have
Yes.
this dopamine boost, you have these feel good hormones, and it sets your mind for the day. And as you mentioned previously, it also tightens your skin and makes you feel more youthful. So in a way, you feel more energized because you look in the mirror and you're like, like I have like less wrinkles, or I feel like, my face is more firm. I don't have these massive bags under my eyes or something like that. If you do that, especially as a routine first thing in the morning, it helps to wake you up, gets you in the right mindset for the day, and it starts your day off well. And I think routines are huge, especially when you actually have a specific goal in mind. You have to build specific routines that you do every single day, because then you can stack specific habits in order to take you closer to your goal easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And really, the great thing about cold, like all your cells come alive. It's like everything just wakes up, and you're like, you can't even describe that feeling until you feel it for yourself. And yeah, in the beginning, it's a little bit uncomfortable, but really, I always say, I say this in almost every episode, that aging is nothing but the aggressive pursuit of comfort. The more we
Yes.
seek comfort, the faster we age. So, like you
Yes.
mentioned earlier, anytime you can get out of your comfort zone and do something that feels uncomfortable, that's where the growth happens.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
cold exposure is just one of these things. Andreas, let's switch over to exercise, which is also your big specialty. Where does someone start? So we have 30 days. We want to get in shape. It
Yes.
might not be realistic for someone who has never exercised before, but it's also a good start. What would be the
Yes.
first thing? Like, I'm a big advocate of weight training, and I love doing
Yeah.
fun stuff like I do bouldering, swimming, hiking, climbing, stuff
Nice.
like that. So for me, it's really important to strength train because I think that's number one. And
Hmm.
also to do stuff that is fun. So like even
Hmm.
Pilates and things like that. What are your
Yes.
views on exercise?
Well, let's break it into a couple of categories to differentiate the types of exercise. So we have movement, which is a biological necessity, which we should all be doing every single day. And so that is your ability to just move your body around, to just walk and to swim, to do yoga, to cycle. This is what I would consider as movement. The harder the exercise becomes and the more intense it gets, and it steps more into the anaerobic scene, meaning that our body now is using more of the anaerobic metabolism, meaning there is a lack of oxygen. Now we are stepping into more of the resistance training, the sprinting, the more aggressive type of training, right? And so this is more of the intentional training that we can do a couple of times per week, but we don't want to be doing it all the time because it actually breaks our body down quite a lot. So you actually want to be spreading your trainings apart. Too much is not good, but too little is not good either. So you need to find a rhythm which works for your body and your schedule. So I always recommend for people at least, 3 times per week, doing something hard is a great idea, especially when it's like spaced out. But movement, which is a biological necessity, you want to be doing every single day. So walking, you need to walk as much as you can,
How
because
many
the
how
more
many
step,
steps?
as many as you can. There is no limit. At least 10,000, at least. So you want to be.
My parents are 75. They did 40,000 steps yesterday.
Wow,
Yeah, and
that's
that's quite
amazing.
normal for them. 20, 30,000. We did the Camino de Santiago together. And they're 75, no joint pain, no weight gain, no health issues. They are in perfect health. And their only secret is walking.
Yeah, I mean, it's magic. It's really
Yeah.
magic, because when we walk, let's talk about walking for a second.
Yeah.
When we walk, we are actually massaging our organs, because our spine is bending from side to side in this figure eight motion. It's doing this figure eight pattern, right? This infinity shape. And so when our spine and our shoulders are rolling back, forward, and down, what's actually happening there? You're massaging your organs inside. You're pushing the blood around the body in this beautiful way that it's actually designed to do. The body is literally designed to walk, run, and sprint. So anybody who says that running is not for me, it just means that you have just gone so far away from your human nature.
Yeah.
Your body literally is designed for that. And running is just a faster form of walking, and sprinting is a faster form of running.
Yeah.
So we can all actually get there with practice. It just takes time and consistency and patience. And so, yeah, the number one thing that people can do is walk. Just walk as much as you can. It's absolutely incredible for your fascial health, your breathing, your lymphatic system, your blood flow, oxygenating the tissues all around the body. The more oxygen they get, the better your metabolism as well. You have like less metabolic waste because your lymphatic system is moving around. So in general, you're detoxifying your body simply by doing the most human thing, which is walking. Now, when it comes to exercise like resistance training that you talked about, this is a key factor, because this is actually going to increase our metabolic rate for the long term. And this is the beautiful thing about the resistance training, right? Because when we do resistance training, we place a load on our body. Our body does not like the load. So what does it do to compensate for that? It makes us stronger. The body actually hates resistance training because it wastes energy. It doesn't like stuff that wastes energy. It likes stuff that gets us from A to B, such as walking is very energy efficient. It doesn't burn many calories, but it makes the body feel good. And it has so many incredible benefits. So people shouldn't do it for burning calories. But if you want to burn calories, then you do high impact training, sprinting, explosive movements, jumping. These is going to burn the most amount of energy within the training. But again, that is more of a short-term goal, right? Burning energy within training. That should never be your focus when you exercise. Your focus should be always on trying to improve your performance. And as a byproduct of that, your muscle mass increases to compensate, because it has to, because of the demand that is being placed upon it. So the greater the demand, the more the body has to adapt. And so in order to keep on repeating this cycle and keep on improving, you have to have what we call progressive overload. And progressive overload means doing a little bit more than last time. It doesn't have to be every single time, every single session, but it has to be on a consistent basis at least. So for example, this week you did 5 kilos on squats. Next week, you want to try and do 6 kilos on squats if you can. Another way to do it is this week you did 10 reps on squats. The next week you do 11. The week after that, you do 12. But of course, you need to stay within a realistic margin, right? Eventually, when you get to 100 reps, where are you going to go? You're going to keep on going. So obviously, the beauty of resistance training with adding a load, like using weights, because you can do resistance training with your body, or you can do resistance training with an external load.
Yes.
So if you have an external load, it makes it way more easier and faster to progress and meet people where they're at. Because somebody, for example, who is just starting out may not be able to do a push-up, but they may be able to lay down on a bench and bench press 2 kilos in each arm because you're lifting just 2 kilos. The next week, they'll be able to do 3 kilos. The week after that, they'll be able to do 4. Eventually, when they get 15 kilos, they can probably start to do push-ups. Yeah. So that's the beauty of resistance training, that not only is it increasing your function, but it's also increasing your muscle mass over time, which is the long-term goal of increasing your metabolic rate. And therefore, you are addressing the foundation of, having a body which is healthy and lower in body fat. Now, if a lot of people, they chase, trying to lose body fat without building the muscle, so they're never addressing the foundation. Yeah. So they keep on digging a hole, losing muscle mass while trying to diet more and more and more, moving their body a lot, not doing progressive overload or resistance training to retain the muscle and build the muscle. And then their metabolic rate is decreasing all the time, more and more, because they're losing muscle. They're perpetually dieting. So that means their metabolic rate is constantly going down in the spiral. Keep on changing diets because you think it's the diet. As I said, all diets are pretty similar. They're all about calorie deficit. Yeah. They all work if you stick to it and you have a master plan, which is to build the foundation, which is your metabolic rate. So yes, obviously in a 30-day period, if you want to accelerate your fat loss, it always helps if you have muscle to begin with. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have muscle, you need to think of strategies. How can I burn more energy on a daily basis? And also, how much food am I eating? Those two factors are two of the most important things. Add in there high quality sleep, good circadian rhythms, good light habits, and you have more optimized hormones that will accelerate the fat loss even more.
And for somebody who has never done any resistance training, where would they start? Would you recommend getting a trainer so they learn the proper technique and form for doing the exercises?
Huge.
Yeah, that's
huge. Yeah, because if you don't get the foundation right, the technique, you can try and do like the exercises, yes, but you can also hurt yourself in the process. And then that is pointless because that will put you 10 steps back. Mm-hmm. So it's better to learn how to do things correctly. And eventually your body does it automatically because no one needs to tell you afterwards how to do something. It becomes an inbuilt mechanism. And this is the beauty of coaching. Like you teach somebody how to do something multiple times, you keep on reminding them, you observe their technique, you keep going over the fundamentals and the basics. And as they understand and remember how they're supposed to do something, now you don't need to tell them as a coach. You just tell them, do the squat. You observe the squat. They do it perfect with perfect technique. Now we can just focus on pushing the client with progressive overload, pushing them to their limits, going beyond their expectations. But we can't push if the foundation is not there, if the technique is not there. But if someone was to start out, obviously try and learn the fundamentals, which is huge, which is squatting. If we think about weightlifting, deadlifting, rowing, shoulder pressing, and pulling. So, doing some kind of pull-ups or assisted pull-ups or something like that. So those are the 5 foundational exercises when it comes to the gym. When it comes to bodyweight training, again, it's bodyweight squats, push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, some lunges, and some abdominal exercise, leg raises or whatever, or some sprints. Those are the foundational movements when it comes to, simple resistance training. Now I teach people unconventional resistance training, which is not something which is conventional, right? And so this is actually moving the body in unconventional ways, which is moving the fascial system, so the entire body together. Yeah. Now, this is not the best approach when it comes to building muscle. I still teach people the fundamentals as well, because we need to build the foundation, which is building the muscle, but then you're also building the function by doing the unconventional exercises. So you're not like a tin man from just doing conventional work.
Yeah, no, I love that. So basically these 5 fundamental exercises that you mentioned, if people can master that, that's pretty much all you need to build muscle. You don't need all these fancy equipment and different fancy exercises and stuff like that. If you can do those 5 exercises or for that you mentioned, that would get somebody into pretty good shape, right?
Well, the reason why I say those 5 specific exercises because they are considered as compound exercises. And compound exercise is an exercise which utilizes more than one muscle group. So for example, when you do a barbell squat, you're going to be using your back muscles, you're going to be using your core, you're going to be using basically almost all muscles of the body, which is pretty insane, you know? And so when you don't get that by doing a leg extension or a hamstring curl, but those are great too. They have their time and place. It's just that they're not the most ideal for getting the most bang for your back, let's say. This is why we advise people to do more compound exercises. Once they get really good at that, then we can focus more on doing isolation in addition to all of that. So you just increase your workload.
That makes a lot of sense. And what do you think about kettlebell swings? One of my favorite exercises. Are you a fan?
I think kettlebells are incredible.
Yeah.
Kettlebells are good because you can progressively overload those as well.
Yes.
And so, you can keep on getting stronger and stronger and keep on building muscle while training functionality.
Yes.
And this is a beautiful thing because you're actually adding load or increasing the reps or the time under tension. Anytime you're doing any of those things, you have progressive overload, which means you're going to be improving the amount of muscle that you have, but also your strength and also your function. So yes, I'm a huge fan of kettlebells because you can do a lot of unconventional exercises with those as well as conventional exercises.
I love that. Okay, so we covered exercise, we covered diet, cold therapy. Is there anything else that we're missing?
I think the light diet is important to talk about because this is huge, right? Because you can get those other factors right, but if you don't sleep well and if you don't have good hormones because you don't sleep well and because of your light environment, you're going to really sabotage your progress and you're going to slow things down massively. So this is literally what I call the foundation of health, is circadian health, because it literally is. It governs how you feel on a daily basis. It governs your metabolism, like to a huge extent, and it governs like how your body repairs, and regenerates and heals itself. So if you actually want to stay young and youthful, you need to master this step, which is crucial. So we talked at the beginning about our light environment, about being in nature, with the sunlight, and also the artificial blue light being in opposition to that. So our indoor environment these days, our modern world, is filled with artificial blue lighting. Even though you can't see it with the naked eye, it doesn't look blue with the naked eye. In some situations it does. When you get really good and you wear blue light blockers, you can start to see the blue. But otherwise, it's always there and it's always blasting us, right? And what blue light actually does is stimulates cortisol production, and cortisol is a stress hormone. And obviously you wouldn't want to be drinking coffee the entire day. So why would you be exposed to blue light all day? It's basically like drinking coffee. And so when you do that, you're drinking coffee all the way up until bedtime. And then you're wondering why you can't sleep. Obviously, if you drink coffee right before bed, you're not going to sleep, right? It's going to activate your sympathetic nervous system, put you in fight and flight. You're going to stimulate as well your production or release of glucose into your bloodstream because your body is in fight and flight. That's what your body does. It goes into gluconeogenesis. And so now you have an elevated blood glucose. So that is also going to suppress your melatonin production. We know melatonin is not just a sleeping hormone. It's a super antioxidant. It helps the body to regenerate, to heal, and to come back better and stronger. You're also suppressing many other factors as well. You're not going to get your growth hormone release in the night, which is essential for skin health and for tendons and for muscle repair and growth, and you're not going to come back bigger and stronger. You're actually going to be digging a hole. So for example, if you have a hard workout and you are not sleeping well, good luck recovering from that workout because you're going to be more sore longer and you're not going to be able to come back as fast to be able to do a hard training again. And you're going to be running into overtraining. Overtraining is not very common, but in terms of thinking of people doing too much work, people are not doing too much work at all. But what they are doing, they are causing overtraining due to the lack of recovery. So they're going into towards burnout because of their lifestyle. And so when we're exposed to these artificial blue lights, especially after sunset, this is really sabotaging our health and our performance and our recovery, our mental health and our hormones as well. So if we actually want to be healthy, we need to be respecting nature. We just need to look outside, what's actually happening at sunset. We have the red light of the sunset. That's the last light that your eye is meant to see. Once it's gone, it starts to become dark in the sky. That's how your home should be inside, right? So in order for us to protect our melatonin and to not stimulate cortisol production, we have to put red light bulbs in our homes, or incandescent light bulbs, or light bulbs which are devoid of blue light, because blue light is literally stimulating our body to think that it's daytime. And so this is why it's so problematic, because our body is under constant stress. Now, non-native electromagnetic fields, which is our Wi-Fi routers, cell phone towers, microwaves, phones, everything is emitting a non-native electromagnetic field, which is these invisible fields, which is also a form of light for your body, which it cannot see, which is even worse. And so basically, it's all the time sabotaging us if we are not distancing ourselves from these sources. We're not turning our phones off completely or putting them on flight mode. If we're not turning off our Wi-Fi at night, especially, or when we are not using it, we're not using cables or Ethernet cables. Like, these are just simple hacks that we can do in order to minimize our exposure, because again, they increase our cortisol, the stress response, they cause this calcium influx into the cell. And what does calcium do? It causes contraction, cellular contraction, muscle contraction. Magnesium is the opposite of that. So you will be burning through a lot more magnesium if you're exposed to non-native EMFs. This is why you need more magnesium if you have a tech job. Or, so it's very, very important to be aware of these things. So what is the solution? Always look at what nature is doing and try and mimic nature in order to optimize your sleep and therefore your circadian health.
Makes perfect sense to me. Okay, so let's sum up the 30-day program for people. We're going to be eating real foods, no labels, yes, right? We'll be prioritizing meat, fruit, vegetables, seasonally grown, hopefully locally and seasonally grown. That's important. And then we need to be looking at exercise, resistance training, some sprinting, getting a trainer, make sure we learn the correct form. And then we need to fix our environment, spend time outside in nature, make sure we're doing our steps every day. Walking should be priority number one. Mitigating the light environment indoors after dark, getting blue blocker glasses, turning off the screens, getting optimal sleep. And then some gentle cold exposure that you slowly get your body used to. And this will transform your life in 30 days, right?
Absolutely. One last thing, one last tip. I think the breathing is huge to mention.
Tell us about the breathing.
Yeah, the breathing is huge due to the fact that also regulates your nervous system state. And anything that gets you into parasympathetic state is going to be more ideal for you losing body fat. Now, I didn't mention this in the entire episode, but I think it's very important to mention is the state of your nervous system will govern how easy it will be for you to lose the body fat or not. Because guess if your body actually cares about losing body fat if you're running away from a tiger. It doesn't. And so this is why you actually want to prioritize putting your body into a parasympathetic state as much as you can throughout the day. Because modern living is constantly putting you in a sympathetic state, whether you like it or not. And breathing is a huge gateway into your nervous system. It is literally a gateway into the nervous system. So the way that we breathe is able to influence whether we're in a sympathetic state or parasympathetic state. And the mouth is meant for eating and the nose is meant for breathing. This is why we need to keep our mouth closed when we're not talking, when we're not eating, breathing through our nose in and out both ways, keeping the tongue on the roof of the mouth, and try and do this as much as you can throughout the day. This will help entrain your body into the habit of doing it. And this is also important for the sleep aspect as well. A lot of people have snoring, sleep apnea, sleep disturbance due to breathing through their mouth. And so if you condition your body to keeping your mouth closed, putting the tongue on the roof of your mouth, this will also be very good for your oral health as well by keeping your mouth closed and getting that saliva there for the minerals. This is amazing, for the nervous system state, because when we breathe in and out through the nose and we breathe to the bottom of the lungs, we activate the parasympathetic nervous system because it stimulates the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is literally, the switch to your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, right? So when you breathe shallow and you're a mouth breather, up into your chest and your shoulders are up, you literally activate the sympathetic nervous system. But this is by design. Your body does everything on purpose. It doesn't do anything by accident. When you see a threat and you gasp because you see a threat, that is by design meant to make you in this tunnel vision, focus, fight and flight, adrenaline, get away from the threat. Once you're away from the threat, come back to baseline into parasympathetic state. That's what animals do in nature. That's what humans are designed to do. But as modern humans have forgotten to get away from the threat. We're constantly running away from the threat, and we forget to actually down regulate, or rather regulate, our nervous system state and come into balance and homeostasis. Because this is where healing, regeneration, detoxification, and repair happens in the parasympathetic state. You cannot do all of those things when you're running away from the threat, as I mentioned. And your body also doesn't care about building muscle. It doesn't care about losing body fat. It doesn't care about your mental health. It doesn't care about your sex drive. It doesn't care about any of those things when you're in a sympathetic state. And this is the state which most individuals are stuck in the modern world. So learning to optimize your nervous system state by taking care of your light environment, your breathing, by exercising. One cool thing about exercise, which I like, is that it's a threat for the body. Mm-hmm. You show the body that there is a threat. When you stop exercising, the body realizes, oh, the threat's gone, or the stressor is gone. So the body can regulate its nervous system state. So even though it might be hard initially for someone who is stressed, it's actually beneficial in the long term for building resilience and increasing your stress threshold.
Amazing. I love that. And grounding, of course, is always very helpful.
Huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge.
Andreas, thank you so much for all the information. I learned so much.
Pleasure.
I'm sure our listeners have as well. Where can they find you? Where can they get more information? How can they contact you?
Well, thank you for having me on, and I hope I wasn't too much all over the place, because
Not at all. It was perfect.
We talked about a lot of interesting topics,
No,
all of the things which I'm very passionate about. But when we dive into many different pillars of health, it's very hard for me to really focus on one, because they're all so intertwined, because you can't have complete health without stacking them all together. Like, health is a pyramid. You have the circadian rhythms at the foundation, right? And then after that, you've got your nutrition. After that, you've got your sleep or whatever, or your exercise, right? And right at the top, you have all your biohacks and your supplements and stuff like that. But it's literally a pyramid. You can't have complete health without having all parts of the pyramid. So thank you for having me on.
And that's why I like it when they just give you a pill to lose weight, or you just need to diet to lose weight. You really need to do all of these things and get healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Start with the simple things like we talked about today. So people can find me on my social media channels. Instagram, which is Andreas_David_Christou. My website is mobility-fitness.com. And my podcast is Fitness Wisdom Podcast on YouTube and also on Spotify. And if you guys come over there from Lynn's podcast, say hi. I would really love to meet you guys.
That'd be awesome. I'll make sure to link everything below when the podcast comes out. And Andreas, thank you so much once again. It was wonderful chatting with you. And thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.